Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1305-1305, and I am Mike Matthews, broadcasting from Cafe Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, Mont, where it's raining cats and little dogs named Fifi. Today we have the Brewmaster Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and we will get to a wonderful segment that we call
Mike's Daily Podcast.
We call it
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Something. I will think of that later, 'cause you put me on the spot. Wait, now I have to go and do a podcast. Everybody is dancing, and I heard from my friend Stormy Phoenix, and her internship at K-Fog was interesting.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Yesterday, she got to meet Matt Pinfield. Hi, it's Matt Pinfield. And
Mike's
I only bring that up
Daily
because I used to watch him
Podcast
on MTV way back when.
Yeah!
That may be why Cumulus is paying him a buttload of money to be on that radio station, K-Fog. And I asked her if he was nice, and Stormy Phoenix said yes. And he's as tall as me, she said. And she's not very tall. Stormy Phoenix. She's little, but she's loud. That's what they used to say about Martina McBride in country music. She had that song called I'm Little, But I'm Loud. Today's segment will be called the Newsbleed section, I've decided. Oh, my phone enjoyed that. Hey, it was a Samsung update night last night, because there was good old Android updates. The whole system had to be shut down and rebooted, and I had to delete a bunch of wonderful, important apps like Instagram. So this morning I woke up Instagramless, and my phone is still chirping away saying, you need to put Instagram back on me. And I'm like, hell no. I hate that trendy piece of crap millennial BS where I have to see all these young people posting selfies of themselves. This is me with a picture with Mickey Mouse. I'm at Disneyland. Look, wee. This is me with a picture with the president. Wee. Look who just walked in. This is me and a picture I'm just taking right now of me and you guys. Hi, Mac. It's Benita the Rodeo Queen. How you doing?
It's a Disgruntled Fiddle Player. Tell you
What?
we need to reinstate the draft and get all these Instagram and Snapchat and millennials off the street and put them over in foreign countries to kill other people. Tell you
What?
that's what I think.
That's so weird, because that's exactly what somebody said on CSpan when I was watching just now. They were going on and on. They were actually making some sense for a little bit, and all of a sudden they dropped that as their last thing. And we need to take the millennials off the street by reinstating the draft. That guy obviously is a pleasant fellow. Yeah, no. We want the 60s to happen again. We really want the late 60s to happen again, when the draft was going on and people were like, I'm not going to war to fight some war that's ridiculous, that's set up, because that's all the wars now that will, the Gulf War was this crazy thing. But I can only tell you that is going to be some people's opinion. And that makes sense. We need to defend the country. I understand. It's a big country. In a big country, dreams stay with you like a mountain across the mountainside thing. Look who else walked in.
Hello, Mike. Can I make the root beer? I'm the brewmaster. Oh, boy. I will defend my country with my root beer.
Your root beer will defend the country?
Yeah, because when you throw it, watch what happens.
Whoa. Explosive root beer. Shocking. Well, we got some interesting stories to bring you in the Newsbleed section. Yesterday, I walked Basil the boxer. We went on a merry walk. And we were going up this hill, and he was huffing and puffing, and I'm like, oh no, maybe he's still sick. and then we went down the hill, and all of a sudden something got kick-started, and he was back to his old self again. So he's making his way back. Thank you for all your thoughts and prayers. If you actually did pray for Basil, you are really awesome. Thank you. Today I drove through a wall of water to get here. It was a big walla walla water, Washington, to get to Cafe Anyway. I was in South Hayward, and it just came down. And I'll tell you, the only reason why I made it to work and didn't get into an accident was because there were no cars around me. Because when water comes down in California, Californians don't know what to do, and they'll drive into the closest wall. Just, that's it. They don't know how to drive, is what my point is. But I don't like to talk about weather on my podcast. I feel like weather really dates the show, and let's say you don't get to listen to the show for 2 or 3 weeks or years, and then you listen to it and you hear me talk about the weather, you're like, who cares? I want to hear Mike talk about important things, like the draft and millennials and such, and exploding root beer. But I do have, this weather is causing me all kinds of problems. As you know, I had a little bit of flooding earlier this year. And then I have this thing with my gutters. My mind is in the gutter because I'm thinking about the gutters on my roof.
And here's today's podcast picture.
And here are pictures of my gutters. Aren't they lovely? No, it's actually a podcast picture today of a crazy little restaurant, bar and grill type place in, what do they call it? Richmond Point, I think is what it's called. It's sort of this little, it's kind of this old towny type Richmond. It's, Richmond is a scary place. And this downtown Richmond is up against the hill. It's really close to the Richmond Bridge. But there's this neat kind of old-timey, old turn-of-the-century sort of feel to it. There's an indoor pool, huge indoor pool, that is called the Aquatarium or something like that. And then there's this cool bar. There's a train tracks that go through it, and near the train tracks is this little downtown, old town area, and this cool bar. And I took a picture, and it has a bunch of this, like, kind of weird ceiling, and what do they call that? Is that it's like a enameled you know what I'm trying to say, ceiling. And then there's, for some reason, a King Tut tomb coffin sarcophagus, and there's all these jerseys on the wall. So and a chandelier hanging, adorned ceiling. What is the word? Anyway, you can see that picture at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. That's from downtown Point Richmond, which I will not go to ever again, because the last time I went there, people just seemed so snooty and weird. And I ended up paying $5 for a tiny, tiny cup of espresso with eggnog in it. And to me, I was like, rip off. Everyone here's a rip off. So I left with Basil, the boxer, never to return again. See that picture now at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. So the gutters, what's happening, my point being, is that the gutters are all weird on the part of the house right next to the front door. So what ends up happening is when it rains, all the water gets focused right over the front door. And so if you're trying to come in and out of the house, you're going through Niagara. You're like walking through Niagara. And I know that's all cool and stuff, and that's from what was that movie? Was that Batman, where he had to walk through a waterfall to get to his secret? That's kind of like what you have to do to get to my house, my lair, if you will. MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com is where you can find all the past podcast pictures. You can help out the show if you enjoy the show. Please shop on Amazon through the link at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. It says shop, connect, and enjoy. I went to Soma.fm, where they have about 3,000 different radio stations you can listen to. And I enjoy, my favorite is the Bagel Rocks, which is funny because I had a friend in Ventura that worked at a place called Bagel Rock. And what that meant was they made bagels, and then on the weekend, his rock band would play there. And it was a great concept, but they did very little to renovate the place, and the carpet was 50 years old and stunk, and yeah, it could have been a better venue. But so Bagel Rock, Bagel Radio is what it's called, actually, where they play a lot of cool garage band. They go back to the 60s. They go through up to the present. They play a lot of new music. It's a neat station. I'm giving them a free plug. But Soma.fm, for all their radio stations they have, including at Christmas time, they do a Christmas Rocks station. It's all rock and Christmas. They do Frisco Christmas station, all music having to do with San Francisco and Christmas. They have like these old 1960s lounge type music stations, and a station that has nothing but secret agent music inspired by James Bond and other spy secret agent type movies. So that's Soma.fm, and I only bring it up because on their website they also have the shop on Amazon, and help us out and go through the link. And I only can imagine that must help them, because they have to pay for a lot of stuff with their station. With all their music, they have to buy the licensing for. So I'm sure that works for them. And then there's also on MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com the PayPal. Show your support by becoming a Mike's Daily Podcaster. You'll get a personalized MP3 for thee from all the Cafe Anyway characters. And there's past interviews too. Just don't go to the 2011-2012 page yet, because my server that had all the past interviews is gone, and I have to re-upload all the old interviews. So check that out. Anyway, you can go from 2013 to the present. That'll give you a lot of interviews to listen to and hear a lot of cool bands. MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Okay, now the segment, the Newsbleed section.
The Newsbleed section.
We're the better-looking horse outside the glue factory.
I can't believe... What the hell is this place anyway?
Let's stop off at CNBC first, because they had an interesting story about Walt Disney getting slapped yesterday with a lawsuit claiming it ripped off the idea for its Oscar-winning, billion-dollar grossing animated animal flick Zootopia from a Hollywood veteran. The federal suit says screenwriter and producer Gary Goldman pitched the idea for Zootopia, which he literally had called Zootopia, twice over the years to Disney and a film company that had a production contract with Disney. The most recent pitch was in 2009. Disney eventually produced Zootopia for release last year. Since then, it has earned more than $1 billion worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing pictures ever. Goldman, whose screenplay credits include Total Recall and producing Minority Report. Oh, he likes the kind of, that kind of sci-fi action type stuff. Claimed that Disney and the other defendants in the suit copied the themes of his version of Zootopia, as well as its settings, plot, character, and dialogue. Some virtually verbatim. It features side-by-side illustrations of Goldman's characters and similar ones from the Disney movie, arguing that Disney was following a tried-and-true formula. It's swiping Zootopia from Goldman without credit for its own enrichment. Although Walt Disney Company rigorously enforces its copyright, it has developed a culture that not only accepts the unauthorized copying of others' original material, but encourages, it says. The suit goes on to mention several Disney hits that it says copied from others' work, including The Lion King, Toy Story, Monsters, Inc., and Inside Out. Let's see. Next, let's jump over to Trump, who yesterday turned up the pressure on Republicans who weren't wanting to accept his sweeping bill to overhaul the healthcare system. He threatened wavering lawmakers in his party with political payback if they failed to get behind a measure that has become an early test of his negotiating power. In a series of meetings and phone calls at the White House and on Capitol Hill, he, along with Vice President Mike Pence and Republican congressional leaders, haggled with holdouts over issues including regulatory details and Cuba policy as they struggled to assemble a majority to support a bill that would repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. The legislation is scheduled for a floor vote in the House tomorrow. It was called the Affordable Care Act. Now it's going to be called the American Health Care Act. So it went from affordable to American. And that's what America is all about, being American. But at a private meeting with House Republicans at the Capitol, the president also delivered a blunt warning that many of those present would lose their seats in next year's midterm congressional elections if the effort failed. I'm going to come after you, he said. He told Representative Mark Meadows, Republican of North Carolina, a prime holdout and the chairman of the Conservative Freedom Caucus, a hotbed of concern about the legislation, according to several people in the room who described his comments on condition of anonymity because the session was private. Quote, I believe Mark and his group will come along because, honestly, a loss is not acceptable, folks. Mr. Trump told Republicans at the meeting, he said, we're trying to get this done. We're moving fast.
But we're moving things along, and we're moving them along fast.
Yeah, they're moving it fast. There was a representative who was for Obamacare in the early days who said that this is moving so fast compared to getting Obamacare passed took a year. This is like happening within weeks, this repeal. And this, was it Tim Ryan is his name, the representative. He was talking on CSpan. He said, it's crazy that the Republicans are trying to repeal this. It's simply based on the fact that they've demagogued it for 7 years. That the dog caught the car, and they don't know what to do. And then somebody called in and said, well, Obamacare actually ended up bailing out teachers, and that made no sense because the money should have did it. And then Representative Tim Ryan said, well, we had to bail out the teachers because they were going under, and where were the kids going to go? The kids that had no teachers. Really, you wanted the kids to just walk around on the streets and get drafted and go to, because they're millennials now. What? Did we say something? Yeah, all that deregulation that was going on, Obama had to do something about it back in the, because that's the, do you remember? Nobody remembers 2009 or 10 anymore, or late 2008. It was crap. Don't you remember? People lost houses. People lost everything. Ugh. I hate this amnesia people get. Somebody also called in, all these Trump haters on C-SPAN. They're just so over. There was the same amount of people calling in that were anti-Trump as pro-Trump, and this person just an oversensitive old. A lot of old people call up C-SPAN at 5 in the morning. I'll just tell you. That's why we dedicated a show to Pedro, the host that manages the whole thing. Although today it's not Pedro, it's the bald guy who looks like my ex-cousin Matt. I went a little bit too personal there, didn't I? I kind of lost you, and I apologize. Let's go to the last story. From Tuesday on, passengers traveling to the U.S. from 10 airports in 8 Muslim countries will not be allowed to have their iPads, laptops, or other communication devices larger than a smartphone. So if it's larger than a smartphone, you lost it. It's gone. If you're traveling from Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, or the UAE on Egypt Air, Emirates, Kuwait Airlines, Qatar Airways, etc. So why is the United States doing this? How did it get away with it? U.S. says it's all about security. The Trump administration says the new rules were introduced because of intelligence that shows terrorists are continuing to target airlines flying to the U.S. An unidentified person familiar with the issue has told the Washington Post that officials have long been worried by a Syrian terrorist group that is trying to build bombs inside electronic devices that are hard to detect. Also, it may not be about security. 3 of the airlines that have been targeted for these measures, Emirates Etihad Airways and Qatar Airways have long been accused by their U.S. competitors of receiving massive effective subsidies from their governments. These airlines have been quietly worried for months that President Trump was going to retaliate, and this might be the retaliation. These three airlines, as well as other airlines targeted in the order, are likely to lose a major amount of business from their most lucrative customers, people who travel in business class and first class. Business travelers are disproportionately likely to want to work on the plane, to kind of try and get themselves to escape from the fact that they're in business class. And it sucks when you're traveling and flying that far. The reason they are prepared to pay business class or first class fares is because it allows them to work in comfort. Wait a minute. I'm thinking of economy, aren't I? Business class is the nice one. What? I haven't flown in a while. Haley will explain all this to me later. The United States is weaponizing their interdependence. This according to the Washington Post. We live in an interdependent world where global networks span across countries, creating enormous benefits, but also great disparity of power. As networks grow, they tend to concentrate both influence and vulnerability in a few key locations, creating enormous opportunity for states, regulators, and non-state actors who have leverage over those locations. In this context, the U.S. is plausibly leveraging its control over access to U.S. airports in the global network of air travel between different destinations. It is using this control to attack the key vulnerabilities of other networked actors by going after their central nodes in their networks, the hub airports, and potentially severely damaging them. Okay. And there was not much that the Gulf airline carriers can do. They have tried to defend themselves against political attacks from U.S. competitors by appealing to free trade principles. The problem is that standard free trade agreements, such as the World Trade Organization rules, don't apply to airlines. As we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Next show, it's going to be Madame Rootabega, Valentino, and Bison Bentley. Have a wonderful day. If you're standing in a wall of water, I hope you find an umbrella soon. And just remember that I will be here day after day after day. If I'm not, it's because I'm working on my gutters. My mind's in the gutter. And I'm trying to prevent the Niagara Falls over my front door. Have a good day.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKES-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Asset allocation. Asset allocation. Asset allocation. Asset allocation.